We welcome Paul Depeau. Paul is the CEO of Social Cedar. It is the mission of Social Cedar is really to empower employees and external ambassadors. And the question is, how do you start an internal movement of people who care and share? That's really the question at the beginning of Social Cedar. And Social Cedar helped more than 250 organizations to start and optimize their employee engagement program using internal but also external ambassadors. They have developed a unique platform. It is an online tool that provides deep insights and learning on what stories move people, and then so that they can become even better or even better ambassadors. So now, Patrick, sorry, I said Paul. It's Patrick Depeau. Sorry.
No problem.
I haven't had a drink during that. So Patrick, sorry again.
No problem.
Patrick is going to have the floor for the next 20 minutes. Thank you, Patrick.
Right. Thank you very much, Elisa. I'm just going to share my screen and then just hope that what you see is going to be, yes, I think. Just because I don't see the screen anymore, so I just hope that everybody sees the slides, and if not, please, Elisa, shout. So the surprising way to engage your employees and boost your visibility. The introduction has been done by Elise. My name is Patrick, and not Paul. I'm CEO of Social Cedar. There's an image there. It just shows that digital, when I was born, was in the first, it was really very heavy digital. So I'm not a very digital native. Basically, we are a company that helps, like already announced, companies to improve on their employee engagement and employee advocacy. And so we are going to share some insights today. Lots of what I'm going to say has already been said. I've been listening to Tessa from Rabobank, and she's completely the same content that lots of slides I have, because basically what we see is there's lots of change in companies. This, I wouldn't say that was when I was young, but companies before, now companies, they are like family. Before, a company was, you opened the door, you went into the company, you closed the door, and up, company life was gone. Now it's all one blurry thing. You take it at home, you take it on holiday, you take it along in your bed. So this is how I see it. Before there was me and there was the work, and now we have me work. The work is like almost my family. And obviously the war for talent, it's been raised a couple of times today as well, is huge. Just read an article in the Belgian paper that most of the companies, they already have big problems in looking finding the right talent. And they are afraid that after COVID, it's just going to be worse, even worse. And so every single company needs to stand out more than ever. Otherwise, it will be it will be very difficult to have a good retention and to look for the right people. So what we see, or at least what I see when I talk to the 250 companies we are dealing with, is that some things are happening, and they are. It's going faster since COVID. Before, in lots of companies, we had an internal communication department, external communication department, and hopefully the external communication department, the marketing department, they had some link with the audience and they could sell something. And we even have companies where the corporate identity of even the corporate identity is different between internal communication, external communication. Now, it's already since a couple of years that we see that internal and external communications, they are slowly sliding together, and slowly they are looking for the right sweet spot for the audience. And the sweet spot isn't only about your product and your price, but it's also obviously about your culture and who you are, and going very fast. I see that internal external communications, they really stick together more and more, which is good, because basically the story that I have to tell as a company towards my coworkers, it should better be the same as the story that I'm also telling to the outside world. And this is something that I picked up also from the session of Tessa, is authenticity, and authenticity creates relevance. And this is something that we see. This is something that we measure. I will show you some results when we move on. And again, I don't think that from time to time you can't talk about your real business and about your products and about what you do. Obviously you can, but it's the way you do this that creates the relevancy. And again, we see that every day creating more and more impact. Now, knowing that 92% of the people they trust, and this is from Nielsen, suggestions most from friends and family, and this is shown in this picture. The power of word of mouth is all over the world, almost the same. It's recommendations. We are all people, and people listen to each other, and people have the most impact, and all the rest is interesting, but it creates far less impact. If you see online video ads, trust is 36%. This was from last year, and 92% from recommendations. So this is the first thing. We are all people. We listen to each other, and we hope at least we have trust in each other. But the biggest problem is what I call the 1% rule. The 1% rule is, if I go to companies and I ask somebody of internal comm, how many, or external communication, somebody from communications, how many people proactively share content of their company, I often get the answer, I don't really know, but most of the times the answer is it will be around 1% or less. So it's a pity, because we see that it's the power of people that create impact, but still there's very few people that, and now I'm talking about proactively share your content. That doesn't mean that you only have 1% of engaged people. Obviously, no. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any company. There's very few people that proactively do it because they don't know, they are afraid of doing something wrong, they don't have the time. There's so many reasons why they don't share it. And that's where employee advocacy comes in. Employee engagement is one thing, but if you really proactively share it, then you will create a big impact for you and also for your company. And this is where the ambassador, or what we say the ambassador side of the story, kicks in. An ambassador, in fact, basically is somebody who is sharing your content on a voluntary basis. An ambassador is not an influencer. An influencer is somebody who's getting paid. An ambassador does it on a voluntary basis, meaning on an authentic basis. They will only do it when they feel the content is right, when they feel that the content is authentic and interesting, and then they will share it. Knowing that one ambassador, if one person, and this is these are figures from average figures in Europe, if an ambassador shares some content, he or she will reach about 317 people. And strangely enough, since March last year, they reach about 400 people. I think we didn't really have any scientific things of it, but we think it's because people are obviously spending more time behind their screens, and so the messages are picked up even more during COVID than before COVID. And this slide shows basically the gigantic impact if you ask people to share content. As you probably know, if I have a company, my company pages on social media, I share something, there's something which is called organic reach. And it's not because I have 1,000 followers that 1,000 followers will see the message. It's a 3%, it's sometimes 2%, and in some companies it's even 1%. So there's only going to be like 30 people that will see the message that I've posted. But if an ambassador posts something, and suppose that you only have 10 ambassadors, and this is what you see here, when 10 ambassadors are posting content, you will reach in between 3,000 and 4,000 people. This just shows the gigantic impact of people that are talking to each other. Some other things that are interesting is knowing that 98% of your employees, they use social media every single day. So why don't you ask them from time to time to also share something from your company? Brand messages are reshared 24 times more frequently when they are distributed or shared by employees. So an employee, again, is not only creating trust, but there's going to be much more reactions on it, and it's reshared. It lives 24 times more than a post from a company. And they get 8 times more engagement. Engagement, thumbs up, like, comments, 8 times more. Why? Because it comes from a human being and not from a company. And it also creates 7 times more leads. Obviously, if you have more engagement, there will be more people looking at your company page, and there will be more leads coming out of that. And the retention rate of somebody who chooses to become, let's say, a customer of your company because it's been recommended through an ambassador, the retention rate will be 37% higher, meaning that in a second year, when they want to purchase again something, they will choose for the same product again. And so what we just saw was that the reach of people have increased with 26%, sorry, since March last year, meaning that it's now even more important than before to start asking your companies, your employees, to share your company stories. And what we also saw basically is that, and this has something to do, because we did do an inquiry there. We also see that companies that work with an employee engagement, employee advocacy program based on ambassadors, there's been even more ambassador activity, meaning that there's more, the ambassadors, they feel even more engaged because they work remote and they want to show that they are part of your company. So they share the story even more frequently than ever before. And the next 2 slides, they really give you some insights of what we are seeing. So it's insights based on 150,000 campaigns, so it's quite big data. And suppose that I am an ambassador of my company and I share a good story, and a good story, we just heard about it also by the other people talking before me, is a good story is an authentic story about your company. It's about your culture, it's about your people, it's about your vision, but it's something which is authentic. That's a good story. If one ambassador shares one story, you will create, per ambassador sharing a story, at least 10 people coming back to your website. With a not so good story, and a not so good story is obviously not authentic and perhaps a bit too commercial, or something which is nobody's really interested in, you will still have about 2 people coming back to your website. But okay, there's a big difference between 10 people coming back and 2 people coming back. So you better have a good and interesting story, because when that story is shared by ambassadors, you see that it will drive lots of traffic back to your website. And this was based on one campaign. This is now based on a year campaign. Suppose that I have only one ambassador that shares stories from time to time. I will create already 200 visits to my content, to my website, thanks to the one person. Just imagine that you have 100, 150, 250, 2,000 ambassadors, and you will drive some visits also, but with wrong content, you will only drive about 20 visits back to your website. Now, this is all very fine because we have all this data, and then we always get this question like, yes, but how do you start with this? It's all very nice, but is it only for the happy few? Is it for the Nikes and the Netflix of this world? No, everybody can start with a program like this, but there are some things you have to know. And again, I'm not the first one saying this, but it all starts with management. Management at this moment, they have to show the example. Management is not somebody who can hide. It's not somebody who is not on LinkedIn, for instance. It's not somebody who should drive a black BMW, and all the co-workers, they drive with these minis in all the corporate identity of the company. No, a manager shows the example. So the first ambassador should be management, even if they don't. If they are not so active on social media, they should obviously become the first ambassadors of your company, and then you will see that it's much easier to convince your coworkers also to become an ambassador. And then look for your power ambassadors. Look first for the 1%. There are already people. There's always people that already share. It's perhaps only 1%, Ask them to become your first ambassador. It's like the first person that reaches out in the street to help somebody is the real leader. So these are the ones that start the process. And if you invite the other people, knowing that there's already some people on board, you will see that there's going to be much more initiative taken. Much more people will become an ambassador of your company. There's also something which is, we call it segmentation. A salesperson is not an accountant, meaning that there's people that are willing in communication to share more than other people, which is absolutely logical. Just have to take that into consideration. Don't ask people that do not have a commercial function to share on a single everyday basis content. They won't do this. So you don't be sure not to burn your ambassadors. The frequency is a very important one. Explain the why. Why is extremely important. Simon Sinek wrote lots of books about this, but you have to explain why I'm asking my co-workers, why I'm asking you to become my ambassador. There's lots of whys. One of the whys could be that if we do this all together, we put a little bit more energy in our communication efforts, we would create big results. But the other why also could be that the more you're active as an ambassador sharing content, it will also be to the benefit of your own network. So it's also to the benefit of the ambassador. Share the results. If you have a program, obviously you have to share the results. What we see is that it's even better to share the general results and not the individual results, because then you get an internal competition. You don't want that either. Everybody can be an ambassador, whether they have a huge network or a small network. You don't have to care. It doesn't mind. It's the effort of everybody together that will make you the big result. That's what you see here. What we've seen is that gamification isn't always the answer. It's more community. If gamification, if you're giving away iPads, things like this to the persons that have the biggest network, share the most, that will be to the benefit of that person, and all the other ones will be felt in the cold. So they're going to discontinue. Whether if you start creating a community and you talk about and you incentivize community, like random acts of kindness, you do a barbecue for all your ambassadors, whatever, you'll see that we have companies that have more than 80% of their co-workers being an ambassador right now. And make it simple. If you ask something to the people, you have to make it simple. If it's too complex, people won't do it. It's just as simple as this. So make it as simple as don't. I also hear lots of content. I like the idea of a content database, but often the content database is the new intranet and people don't find their way. So you have to make it very, very simple. And these are just some ideas on how to create an effective employee engagement program. And I think it's about in timing that I have to end this presentation. So I don't know whether there's some questions. I'm going to close it down.
First of all, thank you very much, Patrick. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No, because the video is freezed. So first of all, thank you very much, Patrick. There are some questions. First, do you think this type of a program, the engagement program, is it feasible for any type of companies, whatever the size, whatever the sector of activity?
We have companies in all types of government, non-government, even NGOs that are working with us, big international companies and small companies. Yes, it is possible. Again, obviously, if you're a single person company, you have one ambassador, it's your own, but we see that the big advantage, the return on investment starts as from in between 25 and 50 ambassadors.
Okay. Thank you very much for the answer. Another question: if you ask people to become ambassadors, is it kind of making them being unpaid influencers?
No, so like we said in our vision, an ambassador is somebody who's joining a program on a purely voluntary basis. That means that there's no direct incentive in there. Obviously, there are also because I just have to mention that companies are asking or deploying an employee engagement advocacy program for three main reasons. Basically, first, to create a branding. So I call this a marketing effect. The second one is also social selling, because you can ask your sales people to share as much information as possible, which creates social selling. And the third one is HR recruitment. Now, often in recruitment, there's a rewarding, because if thanks to me, there's somebody who's applying for a job, often internally in companies, they already have a rewarding. But basically what we see is that if there's not the direct gamification, if there isn't any direct gamification, the program becomes more strategic. So the people that join, they join because they want to join. They are really interested in your company and they want to show their pride. And then you create a long-lasting program. Instead of gamification, is often programs that go like this. So.
Okay. Very interesting. The very last question, because we're running out of time. When someone becomes an ambassador, can you observe that being an ambassador is like for a certain time lapse, or people stay ambassadors for years? Have you observed anything on this?
Well, obviously, it all depends on your employer branding program, on your company's vision. We just as an example, my first customer ever 7 years ago is still it's a big international bank. They're still having the same program, and every year they increase the amount of ambassadors, because obviously the ambassador program is also on the onboarding, like, do you want to become our ambassador? Meaning that there's already people in the program for more than for 7 years. So it's quite a long time. So I think I just can imagine that once you're proud of a company and the company stays doing what they say they are, and that they show their values, I think you just stay ambassador. This is at least what I see. Yes.
Okay, good. And then I can see that I'm not the only one that is curious about the quota is behind you, and Jago was exactly the same question. So I was wondering what is this?
Well, this is normally I should have done it like this, because
no. Now we've seen it. We want to know.
Yeah, but I'm renting an office, and this was basically from the the people before.
Okay.
And basically it says, never forget, only dead fish swim with the stream. And just for the small story, it were white letters, so I thought to take them out.
And then
but then it was
okay.
So it's the sun that played with
so now
the
we got the answer. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Patrick. It is very interesting. And as again, we are running out of time. There are other questions, so I invite you, Patrick, to go on the chat and answer. Okay.
Thank you very much.